Ooh, bonjour, you're here, I'm queer, and welcome back to my channel. Bonjour everyone, as you can see I am... Oh, 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 I will be making Miss Kardashian. You guys requested her, and I am here to deliver. As we all know, Kim Kardashian and her family are quite polarizing. You either love her or you hate her. For me, I like to keep track of what's happening because obviously the designers, the ateliers love the Kardashians and the Jenner family, and because they are very, very influential. Since Kim's personal style is quite subdued and minimal, I wanted to do her iconic look from last year's Met Gala ball in themed of camp. And that's also why I'm kind of rocking this. If I was to go to the Met Gala, you'd best believe I will be, a fashionable poodle. Ooh la la, this is so très magnifique. So when the Met Gala was happening last year, I was actually kind of like tooting or booting some looks on Instagram, and as I said before, I still don't think that Kim's dress was the campiest, of them all, but I am making it because it's still very, very good, it's still very fashionable, and because Manfred Mugler came out of retirement to design it. I think being part of the queer community, I see camp on a daily basis, literally. All of my Instagram feed are drag, gay, queer, fashion extraness, and maybe that's why I didn't really see this as high camp. If you guys have followed me for quite some time, you know that I have a little bit of obsession with Thierry Mugler, especially the 90s runways, and I reference him all the time. He just loved to put strong silhouette on women's and femme fatale figures. Literally, if Bayonetta was real, I'm very sure she would be rocking some Thierry Mugler. And if you guys know Sailor Moon, a lot of the characters' costume, mostly villains, are inspired by Thierry Mugler. Naoko Takeuchi loved high fashion for sure. Now Kim's look was actually inspired by Sophia Loren's wet t-shirt when she came out of the water from the movie Boy on a Dolphin. And that's why Mugler called this look the wet couture dress. And Vogue actually released a video about Kim and her journey to the Met Gala. So they showcased her fittings, her makeup, behind the scenes, and all that. And just the romanticism of the dress was so, so nice. And apparently it was made with silk organza, which I've never heard of before. I don't know a lot of textiles. So, I was like, that's so cool. It really gives off the translucent, wet look. And of course, it has the beads and the crystals to represent the water droplets. I can't wait to show you guys the process of this doll. It was definitely a journey, a lot of trial and error. Ooh. But literally every single doll has their own challenges, and we're just here to go ahead and face it head on. You know what I mean? So yeah, let's get into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. So the victim for today's video is going to be this hybrid that I bought from eBay, and she has the Gal Gadot face mold with a Model Muse Barbie body. Of course, Kim is known for her body, so we will be doing a lot of body modifications. So first, let's go ahead and glue this all together with super glue. Unfortunately, yes, this is going to be a static doll, but you know what? As long as it looks good in the end, that's all that matters to me. After the super glue dries, I'm gonna go ahead and mix the epoxy sculpt 2 equal parts together to give her the body yaddy yaddy. Well, mostly hips and butt. When it comes to body modifications on a Model Muse body, as you can see, their hip is kind of locked into place and they're kind of popped in one side. So you want to take that in consideration when you are trying to modify the hips. You kind of want to make it as symmetrical as you can. And then I'm adding onto her boobs just to kind of change the shape of it, not necessarily to add volume, because the dress was actually kind of pushing it up and it was creating a nice cleavage moment, so that was kind of the point as to why I added a little bit more on her chest. Now, doing the body modification first, I had the intention of commissioning an outfit for her, and I did that. However, you really just can't do a wet look with any materials that will translate well into doll scale. Like, we can't be doing silicone or the whole quote-unquote silk organza in a doll scale and have the same effect. So I'm going to go ahead and just sculpt her dress on her. So first, I'm gonna go ahead and take some tape and I will tape her legs, and this will be the skirt, kind of like acting as a shell so we don't use up too much clay and it's not too heavy. And I am kind of sketching around her body for the dress so I know where things will go. And then we can finally go ahead and put on a slab of epoxy sculpt onto her. And yes, this will be her dress, and I work in layers because, as you guys know, epoxy sculpt do dry over time. At this point, when I was sculpting all of the details, I was like, wow, okay, this was probably a good decision. It looks like it's literally so skin tight. It's on her, it looks like Mugler's dress, and I was like, all right, let's go for it. Now, when I was working at the back, we all know that this is the money shot. So I was like, okay, I have to carefully contour all of these lines correctly. They all have to really emphasize her butt. And I hope I did that. And I think I did that. So we'll see. Since we are in the topic of the Met Gala, what has been your favorite gala looks of all time, not just from the 2019? For me, for sure, it's most of Rihanna's looks, obviously the drag queens that came last year, Aquaria, Voila, Chachki, they were all serving looks. I don't know, I just love the Met Gala when celebrities actually do take the theme very seriously. And now I have her dress completely sculpted and it's kind of already dry, but before we finish it off with her shoulders, I want to go ahead and repose this arm. As you can see, she is holding her waist, and I'm gonna go ahead and take my heating gun and I will just heat up her elbow. I got this technique from Suresh and I did it from my Trixie Mattel doll as well, so I will do that here. As you can see, you can actually make it malleable and kind of like repose it, and you want to hold it like that, and then you want to dip it in cold ice water to kind of solidify it and kind of freeze the pose. And then I also want to go ahead and repose her fingers. As you guys know, I love delicate Renaissance-y poses for the fingers. And look at that, it's very soft. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut out her index finger so we can kind of separate that. And then I will pose it very, very delicately. And then again, to save it, quote unquote, let's go ahead and dip it in cold water. And there you have it. Kim Kardashian did a lot of this pose while she was in the Met Gala, so I thought it was kind of fitting to kind of change it up. But look at that finger. Oh my god, it's kind of pointing. Look at the index. So cute. I also kind of want to change up her left hand. The index finger was already separated, but it wasn't delicately posed. So as you can see, I'm kind of bending it here and there, kind of reposing it, and then we'll do the whole water dipping again, you know? And now this is the final pose for Miss Kardashian. As you can see, her fingers are delicately posed. They're very Renaissance-y, they're very angelic and model-esque. So yeah, this will be it. I will be super gluing them in place so we can actually work on her sleeves. And this is the same exact technique that I did for her overall dress. I just rolled out a very thin piece of epoxy sculpt, so I was able to get this slab, and I just work in sections, like I said, and create the details here and there. As you can see, I taped around her arms just so that I don't get unnecessary clay on it, because you guys, taking clay off the skin is a lot harder sometimes, and you don't want to sand it sometimes because it changes the texture. So that's kind of the hardship, and you want to protect your overall doll from it. And now I'm just adding a piece in the middle to kind of act as her closure for the seams for the buttons to go to. So it's just a good way to kind of tie things together. And now taking the foam clay that I actually used in my Ursula doll, as you can see, it's very flexible and you can create very thin, like very thin things with it because it's so flexible and it retains elasticity. So yeah, I'm just going to create kind of like the ribbon that goes in the middle. You could use actual ribbon, but for the sake of it all kind of matching in terms of color and texture, I'm just using clay, and as you can see, I'm kind of sculpting it in place, but not really, because I will glue it in the end. And now let's go ahead and sand her entire dress. Obviously, it needs to be very sleek. It needs to be very smooth as much as possible. And now we literally do have it completely dried, completely sanded, very smooth. As you can see, she is ready for some pigments. And let's go ahead and paint this with some acrylic paints. Now I first started to paint this to look like Sophia Loren's actual t-shirt dress that she was wearing in the movie that Mugler referenced, but when I looked at Kim's dress, it kind of really looked similar to her skin tone, which was a little bit more of a warm caramel. So I had to go through different trial and error for this one. As you can see, I'm trying over here to match Kim with her boobs and her skin. And so I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and modify her skin tone that I did and add that to the dress. And I think it looked a little better. And this is the color that I settled with. As you can see, her skin and her dress are looking a little bit matte, and that is because I sprayed it with Mr. Super Clear, or as you guys want me to say, Mr. Super Queer. And we can go ahead and finally add details with some pastels and shadows. As you guys know, this dress is meant to represent a marriage between Kim's skin and also the dress's color. So it needed to kind of blend in together. And so adding artificial shadows like peaches, burnt sienna, umber, browns, all of that, all of the same tones will really add into it and really give it the dimension that it needed. Yes, I also add in artificial shadowing here and there for the dress in order to kind of contour the body a little bit more, but all of this was actually necessary. The dress itself didn't really take a lot of layers of Mr. Super Queer. However, I decided to blush her body also. So, you know, the layers of Mr. Super Queer on her dress and then the layers on the body, it all just contributed to each other. So overall, it was a lot of layers. And here I am just adding some peaches, some blushing, some pinks, some browns onto her skin, her elbows, her hands, her knees, her feet, everything. Her collarbone, her neck. You know, I just want to kind of overall give her some skin details. And now we're done with her overall body modification, her dressing, her colors, everything. And now we can finally move on to her head. So first, I'm gonna go ahead and remove her hair. We are going to be making a wig for Miss Kardashian. If you guys didn't know, she was actually wearing a wig for that look. I was actually very shook. But now let's go ahead and remove this with our scissors. What else? And also pliers in the end. After that, I'm gonna go ahead and remove her factory paint with acetone, or you can also use nail polish remover if it has acetone in it. And then after this, I go ahead and spray this with Mr. Super Queer so we can finally draw on it with our watercolor pencils. And as always, the first layer of Mr. Super Queer is the trial and error layer. This is where you want to sketch things out. If you want to erase things, this is where it all happens. And then when you are kind of happy with how things are going, you can then add details on it in the same layer. And until pigments stop producing pigments, then you go in with Mr. Super Clear again. Kim's overall makeup palette was pretty neutral. I know I keep saying neutral, but it's gonna look very dramatic in 1 second. But it was pretty neutral in terms of color palette. Everything was kind of like in the brown tones. Just color-wise, it was all neutral shades. And of course, we can't let her walk around without her cheekbones popping out. Mario will not be happy. So I will be giving her some contouring, some shading, some blushing, all with chalk pastels. And now we're in a new layer. I am finally giving her more details and more pigments. As you can see, I am smoking out her eye. Her eye makeup over here was definitely just very smoky. And in the middle of it, it was kind of like a wet look. Like the eyeshadow wise, it was kind of like white for her eyelids, and then they definitely added glitter. Now because this is a Barbie, and because scale wise, glitter will not work out, I just decided to go ahead and just highlight it with a pencil. And of course, the eyeliner is definitely a must. I feel like I should have given a warning in the beginning of this video. I really should have. But even though in my eyes she is looking amazing and sickening, I definitely know that she is not a Kim Kardashian copycat. It is not a mirror image. You know, realism is just not my bailiwick, so I just decided to take the key points of Kim's makeup, key points of Kim's facial structure, and I added that onto this doll. And then using my acrylic paint, I am giving her some catch lights. And to really emphasize the wet look on her skin, I am giving her a Pearlex powder treatment. As you can see, this one is gold. I feel like the gold just matches Kim's overall tones a lot more. She is a lot warmer in tone, and I'm doing that for her body as well. And this one on her body was an additional 3 layers, I think, 3 to 4 layers of Mr. Super Queer. So yeah, she is like a walking can of Mr. Super Clear already. And I did add the silver Pearl X as well, so she is a mixture of gold and some silver Pearl X powders. And then, to gloss up her lips, I am using the Sculpey Gloss Glaze. And now we're finally done with her face. And here is a before and after. Now let's go ahead and work on her hair. I've already prepared yarn acrylic wefts in black for Kim Kardashian's wig. And as you can see, I think this should be enough. Hopefully. First, I go ahead and kind of mark the wig cap, just so that we have some guidelines, specifically where I want the part to go, and then I go ahead and hot glue the wefts one by one, starting from the nape of the neck. You kind of want to start from the bottom first, going up, and then you want to skip around to work on the part of the hair. Literally, obviously, the focal point of this hair is where the part goes, so that one is the most important part. And yes, if you've noticed, I was working on this before I did her face up, so there are continuity errors as usual. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cut the hair because Kim's hair was just below her shoulders and we want to emulate that. And then I'm also going to go ahead and curl it. And for this one, I'm using a heated rat tail. As you can see, it produces fine curls like this. And then when everything is curled up, let's go ahead and kind of brush it out. And then I go back in with my heated metal chopstick to kind of give her some waves. She kind of had a wet version of a Veronica Lake vintage wave going on, and I love that, as you guys may know. And so far, this is what we have. Before we finalize the styling, let's go back to her dress, quote unquote, and actually give it the wet treatment. I'm using Liquitex gloss for this one, and I believe I layered it 3 times. I used it on Bo Peep as well, and it really just gives it a really glossy, wet looking look. And you do want to kind of layer it because the first layer, it was a little just... it's glazy, it's not glossy, you know? And we should have something like this, and look at that. Oh my goodness, she just came out of the ocean. Wow. Now for the actual wet look, like the dewdrops and all of that, I am using some gems, some crystals here and there. I got all these from Amazon, and I'm also using glitter here and there, so just a mixture of things. And then from here on, I will be applying everything with Mod Podge, the glossy one, to maintain the wet look. And as you can see, this is the trial of me kind of sprinkling the mini paillettes of glitter. But then I was like, you know what, maybe I can apply with brush. And the brush was good, it was a little bit more precise. The brush allowed me to also individually place the glitters. And there was definitely kind of like a pattern as to where they added all of the glitters and all of the crystals in Kim's dress. So I was going on with the rouging technique. Things were going horizontal and things were fading in terms of the glitter that I was using. And this one was really cool. It's literally like mini paillettes, if you guys are familiar. And then I just kind of faded that out going onto her sides. And this is what we have so far. And yes, I did work with this in sections as well because, you know, wet glue means that things are gonna come off. So now let's go ahead and work on her chest and also her shoulders. And we are done so far with the front of her dress. I'm sure I will go back into this to kind of like detail things. But now let's go ahead and work on the back of the dress. It's really crazy when looking at this dress, like all of these are individually like placed, and they're also strategically placed in order to really emphasize the curves, to really contour the body, and it's definitely a bespoke design for Kim Kardashian. When working with glitter like this, or, I keep referring to it as mini paillettes, but technically it is glitter, it's very easy to overlayer and oversaturate a certain piece, a certain design with glitter. So for this case, for the shot for the contours, I definitely tried my best to be subtle with it because overlayering it can actually erase all of the shadows that I did. While I was working on this, because the glue doesn't dry for like a long time, I was like, oh my god, it is looking like a mess. She's looking like a polka dotted mess until all of the glue dries down. And then I'm taking these crystals. I got them from Amazon, but they're meant for nail art, and they kind of look like water droplets. So I'm kind of just adding that onto random parts of her dress. Not too much because in terms of mass, they add a lot. And then for her buttons, the crystals that I bought were actually perfect scale. So I'm just using that, and I'll paint over that later. And now it's time to paint the ribbon that we sculpted earlier. And then I just adhere this with super glue. And of course, like the rest of them, this will also be covered with glitter and also crystals. And then for her shoes, Kim was actually kind of wearing transparent slide heels, but for this one, I got this. Actually, I don't know where it's from, I don't know who it's from, but I got it in my collection of shoes, my Barbie shoes, and it fits the look really well. It fits the Model Muse feet really well, and I'm just painting it with her skin tone and also silver for the soles. And I will be super gluing this onto the Model Muse body just because, so that it doesn't fall off and stuff, and I will be adding crystals and glitter in the end. And now we're done with her shoes. Her dress should be all dried up, so let's get back into it. As you can see, all of the glue is completely dried. We can definitely hold her and, move her around. So now let's go and add all of the wet dripping effect. I first start with her arms by placing individual glitters around it, just sporadically, just so that it really gives off the water dewdrop look. And then we'll be adding the falling water effects. And we should have something like this. But for the actual falling water effect, I am taking this fish line. As you can see, it's kind of transparent. And there are different thickness to this, so you can kind of research that. And I'm also taking my hot glue gun to create those water dewdrops individually. As you can see, this was definitely painstaking to do because you have to individually create it and you have to roll it. And I believe I did at least 3 to 4 batches of this, because, I'd rather have extra than not enough, And then I just adhere it with hot glue as well. So while placing it on her arm, it was already looking a little too much in terms of scale, and the effect is not right. Like the hot glue gun was too matted, it was too white looking and not transparent, and it was too big. So we're gonna have to start from the beginning and scratch all of this off. So I take the fish line and I glue it with Mod Podge individually, and I kind of like strategically, place it everywhere. And the good thing with Mod Podge is that it's thick enough where it actually can hold it for a few seconds and dry on its own, so you don't have to kind of hold it in place, as you can see over here. So that one was already really cool. And as you can see, you should have something like this, very fringe looking. I don't even know what to call this, but we are going to be trimming this in the end when all of it is dried. And then I go ahead and glue that on the rest of her body, like her hips, her back, and also her butt. And now for the dewdrops, I'm actually using Mod Podge for it. It dries transparent, and I'm also adding some gems in the end to really reflect light. So it's just a mixture of some of the glitter, most of the Mod Podge gloss, and then some of the gems. And in the end, it really gave off a cool look. You definitely don't want to make it too uniform in terms of the pattern, so sometimes I would go over and over a single Mod Podge to really kind of build it up layer by layer. So this one was actually kind of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was really fun. And now we're finally done with her dress, and as you can see, the water dewdrop effect is just there to emphasize the wetness and not to take away from it, because the hot glue gun was really taking away. It was too much, it was too big in terms of scale, and this one's a little bit more subtle, yet effective. And Kim was rocking some good acrylic nails, so let's go ahead and redeem ourselves with hot glue and use that for her nails. And I believe her nails were kind of like a gradient, pearlescent vibe, and so I just painted it with pearlescent white. Let's go ahead and put her wig back on and do some final stylings and detailings, and we're pretty much done with Kim Kardashian.